Greetings Exiles, BullShifter here back with another Path of Exile PS4 tutorial video. Today I'm going to be running the Apex of Sacrifice. As you can see, pretty standard modifiers here. For those of you who aren't familiar with what the Apex of Sacrifice is, it's a map that is actually created using the 4 different shards of Sacrifice. There's Dusk, Dawn, Noon, and Midnight, I believe. I don't remember the exact names, but basically there's these little shard pieces that you pick up, and 4 of them form an actual full circle. So once you've collected all 4 of those, you can actually come and run the Apex of Sacrifice. Now, something to keep in mind when you are running the Apex of Sacrifice, or before you're about to run the Apex of Sacrifice, is you do this by putting those pieces into your map device. Now, you do have to put them in a specific order. They actually have to form the circle that it looks like they would form in order to work. So if you don't put them in the correct order, it's actually not going to work to get you into the Apex of Sacrifice. So the actual order that you need to do that in, you need to put in the upper left piece, then the lower left piece, then the upper right piece, and then the lower right piece. That'll make it so when you put the 4 pieces in the map device, they form that circle, and at that point you'll be able to go ahead and actually run. And this is actually one of the pieces right here, Sacrifice at Dawn. So we'll actually come back here real quick and I'll show you. So they look like this. They're 4 pieces and they all form a circle. So once you place those into your map device, you'll actually be able to go ahead and run the Apex of Sacrifice. Now this area has some pretty great drops, especially the final boss, Atziri. She can be a challenging boss fight if you are not aware of the actual mechanics behind the fight itself. There's one in particular that I will mention as soon as we get in there, that if you don't pay attention to it, she will very quickly wipe you out multiple times to the point where you end up failing. It works just like any other map. You get 6 portals to enter with. Once you die 6 times, you can no longer enter the map, and you've technically failed, and you basically wasted your sacrifice pieces. Now, it's not always the easiest to get all 4 of those, so you definitely don't want to waste those. So there's multiple layers to the Apex of Sacrifice. This is the first one. You just kind of go through, find these stairs. You're just going to be fighting normal mobs. There's not a boss on this level. This next level we're heading into is actually going to have a boss fight. So there's going to be 2 bosses that spawn on each one of these. Now, the biggest thing that you're going to want to pay attention to when fighting these is essentially kind of dodging their main attacks. They telegraph their attacks pretty obviously. There's a slam attack that does fire damage. There's a couple of electricity attacks that they have, but they're not very fast. And especially if you can kind of get behind where they're attacking, you won't really struggle all that much. So as you can see, this one's firing off some orbs. We actually killed him off. Maybe we didn't actually. But we're relatively overpowered for this particular boss fight. So we probably won't even see that electric attack. The electric attack is probably one of the only really dangerous attacks that he has. And he'll fire off a bunch of different rays of electricity throughout the map, and if you can kind of get behind him, just use your movement skill to avoid it, you'll be absolutely fine. So once you finish that boss fight, much like the very first level, you're just going to run through a bunch of mobs. All 3 damage types are going to be present in the temple, so you want to make sure that all of your resists are as close to 75% as possible. So keep that in mind. There are 3 flasks that I always like to keep on myself to help me with survival. I always make sure to keep a flask to remove bleeding, a flask to remove poison, and a flask to remove freezing. So that's something that I would keep in mind as well. You can also carry flasks that remove shock and ignite, but I don't think they're nearly as essential for your survival as the 3 that I had previously mentioned. So as you can see, the door's right there. These levels aren't particularly long. You can kind of get through them pretty quickly. And this next level is going to have 3 bosses that are all a bit harder. The trick behind these, if you are a ranged character, is to keep your distance as much as possible and just kind of stay away from them. If you are a melee character, you're just going to want a lot of physical damage mitigation, and you're going to want to probably have just some form of leech life or a couple different health files, just something that help you to essentially take the damage that they're going to dish out. You can see the one uses whirling blades, which can hit pretty hard. There is one ranged attacker. I would suggest taking out the ranged first if possible, because her attacks will hit a bit harder when she's alone. The very last one will fight harder than the previous three when they're all together. But yeah, if you can kind of keep your distance, just avoid their attacks in general. They do hit relatively hard, so if you're ranged, I just kind of try and stay away. And like I said, if you are a melee character, just make sure you have plenty of physical damage mitigation, a lot of, a high armor level, essentially, to be able to actually take those hits without having to worry too much. So this will actually be the last area before we fight Atziri. And again, we're just running through some mobs here. All pretty self-explanatory. You shouldn't have too much trouble here. So damage-wise, my rule of thumb on this is if you're able to do kind of the higher mid-tier maps, so if you're doing like, say tier 7, tier 8 maps without any issues whatsoever, you should be able to get through the Apex. It's not going to be that bad for you. And if you're doing red maps, you're probably going to eat the Apex alive, much like you're kind of seeing me do here in this video. I don't want to play it off like this is easy. My build is kind of really gotten into a good place, exactly where I want it, so the Apex has become a relatively easy task for myself. Now, one other thing I do want to mention before this boss fight starts, I am currently running a prophecy called the Queen's Vault, which is a great prophecy to run if you're going to be running the Temple of Apex, or the Apex of Sacrifice, I'm sorry. It's going to drop you a pyramid map, which is going to be the Queen's Vault. That is what the actual prophecy itself does. You'll defeat Atziri, she'll drop that map, and when you enter that map, it's essentially a loot vault, and it is awesome. There is some awesome loot there. It's actually where I got this 6-link from. I got a corrupted 6-link, had some great stats on it for my build, so I was able to stop using my 6-link that didn't have any stats on it at all. The one downside was the fact that it's corrupted. However, you can mastercraft on different colored socket links, so that is the one way that you can kind of get around that. You can't craft any affixes on it, but you can change the colored sockets through mastercrafting, so just something to keep in mind. And that's actually only one of 2 6-links that I got there in that temple. So this is Atziri's first form, and this form you kind of just go ham on. She has that spear attack. She also has, that large attack, area attack. So this is the one we need to worry about. That one with the mirror right there, right in front of us, we want to avoid attacking that one at all costs. Because that mirror, that means she's reflecting your attacks right back at you. If you do high DPS, that's going to kill you almost instantly. That's the secret to beating Atziri in the Temple of the Apex of Sacrifice. If you attack her mirrored form, you are going to die almost instantly. That's the way that you end up going through all 6 lives, losing all your portals. So for an attack like this, like Winter Orb, I need to be very careful, and I need to make sure that when she goes into that form where she has all 4 of those different forms, those clones, I need to make sure my Winter Orb isn't up. Because if it's up, it's going to attack every one of those, and I'm going to be in a lot of trouble. And those AoE attacks hit relatively hard, so we need our Winter Orb down. It went down. So here we are, and this should be the very last form. So, I mean, as long as, honestly, you can avoid... Oh, no, it's going to come one more time. So as long as you can avoid her form with the mirror, you're going to be fine. That is the one way she does a ton of damage. I didn't really get a chance to talk about this form. This is just when she's bringing in a bunch of minions. And essentially here, you're just mowing down her minions, waiting for that shield that she has on her to come down. This is probably the easiest of all the forms. You're basically just playing a waiting game. But if you have any sort of homing attack, like a Winter or a Volatile Dead, like I said, make sure that when she goes into that clone attack, that you get rid of that. Make sure you're not using that attack, otherwise it will kill you. So there's the pyramid map I was telling you about. That's going to have some very, very great loot for us. Another reason to run Atziri is the fact that she does have boss-specific drops. I believe I actually got this scepter from her as well, which has done really well for my build as well. So from here, we can actually portal out. Now, one thing I would keep in mind when you're using that pyramid map, since it does give such great loot, I would go ahead and actually try to use cartographer's chisels on it. As you saw kind of earlier in the video, I had an offer rejected by someone, even though I offered twice as much as what that prophecy is worth on PC. Oh, this is actually a really good belt too. We don't do lightning damage, but if we were a lightning build, this would actually be a really solid item. We'll go ahead and store that. But yeah, it's if you can get the prophecy, that makes it so you'll greatly improve the quality of a map with one chisel, basically taking it from level 1 to level 20. That's going to be ideal. This being a unique map and not a white map, we're going to burn through a lot of chisels doing this. However, you know, it's going to be worth it for us just because of the fact that it's going to greatly up the amount of rewards that we're going to get from that map. So we'll go ahead and we'll actually quickly run that. There's actually no enemies here, so you don't really have to be prepared for any enemies to come along. So as you can see, we're going to have to use 20 of them. Now it is a little bit of a gamble, but I mean, considering the fact that the first time I ran this, I ended up getting, you know, 2 6-link items, I'm not overly concerned. We will find a lot of corrupted items which have limitations, but it's not that bad. I'm going to leave it unidentified, just because you do get a bonus for running maps that are unidentified. As you can see, we can't add any of those on there. We'll go ahead and take ourselves to the vaults. So essentially there's just going to be a lot of chests. And we'll just go through and open a bunch of these. I'll end up looting later. So as you can see, very solid divination card there. Not a 6-link, but a 6-socket. So hopefully using all those cartographer's chisels ends up being worth it. I only had to use one the first time, so if we end up getting a bad haul this time, it's not as big of a deal. And we can run our attack here to get rid of all these gold pots. Make sure you don't miss any sarcophaguses or chests in this area. Not just the large chests, but the normal chests also. Also keep in mind, you can absolutely use your portals to come in and out. You get 6 portals in here, just like any other map that you would run. So if you have to come in and out to maximize your gains, you know, by all means, just portal scrolls, they're not worth really anything. Destroy all those. And at the end here, there is going to be a vol chest, and that's what will determine, you know, that you've essentially cleared the map. So, right there, that's a 6-link item. That is a 6-link axe. Corrupted, but, you know, solid. You can never complain about getting a 6-link. Not something I'll use for this character, but definitely something that someone else could use. Something we can sell. So, and there is a second room here as well. So this is just the the first room of 2. I'll end up coming back through here later and picking up some of these extra items. But for now, I just want to open everything up, see if we get anything really good like that 6-link. So this is only the second time I've actually run this map, and both times I've gotten at least one 6-link item. So Spider Silk Robe, another Divination card for level 100 ring, Divination card, and so you want to break all these gold pots also, because items may pop out of those. Now, one thing I do want to note is the only reason why I had that map drop guaranteed from Atziri was the fact that I was running that prophecy. So if you aren't running that prophecy, you're not going to be guaranteed to get this map. However, there are plenty of people on the trade market selling this map, and some, I believe, even have it listed for a relatively reasonable price. So you can also check there if you're not necessarily, you know, comfortable with running the Apex, or if you just haven't been lucky enough to get that prophecy. This is the second time I've gotten that prophecy. An assassin's bow. Spirit shield, very nice. So, a few decent items. Unfortunately, I'm not too confident we're actually going to get a second 6-link, but, you know, as anyone who's been playing the game for a while knows, a 6-link item is not super common, so... To put things in perspective with the cartographer's chisels, you can get 20 of those for 12 chaos orbs, just from the vendor that's, you know, actually in town. And some people on the trade market will actually sell them for even less than that. I'm not sure why, but they do. So as long as you're making, you know, more than 12 chaos orbs with everything that you end up picking up here, then, you know, you're pretty well set. And a bunch of sacrifice pieces. Oh, haha, we're actually out of space. But yeah, so at this point we'll end up portaling back into town and dropping off our gear, coming back and picking up more stuff. But that in a nutshell is the Apex of Sacrifice and the Vaults of Atziri. So just a really great way to get some really solid loot. This chest piece was a complete game changer for my build. I went from, you know, running some tier 10 maps and being able to run them, but rather slowly, to essentially burning through tier 12 and tier 13 maps like they're nothing. And at this point, I'm pretty sure I can go higher, probably up to tier 16. I just actually have to get that far in the Apex, but with the league being where it is, I'll probably have to wait until I'm transferred to standard to be able to do so. But this is just, like I said, a really great way for you to gear up your character, get some really top-notch gear, and even if you are to the point where you're going to struggle in the Apex of Sacrifice, as I mentioned, you can always buy this Vaults of Atziri map on the trade market as well. So I hope you found this useful. I hope that some of you put this to good use, and I hope that you enjoyed the video. I will be streaming again tomorrow, as I do every Monday at 8:30 on Twitch. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday I'm there, so be sure to follow me on Twitch so that way you can be there live for my streams. And if not, I do upload them afterwards to YouTube, so be sure to subscribe to the channel to catch all of those. Until next time, may the RNG be with you, always.